Hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? We get to see some build up on what the Sinister Six is up to, as well as more lore on how it's going with Aunt Anna at the Ravencroft Institute. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be reviewing The Amazing Spider-Man number 46. If you enjoyed this video at any point, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and without further ado, let's jump right into this comic. The story begins very simple enough with the Sinister Six, minus Sandman, because of course he's at the Institute. They're plotting to actually break out the Sandman from the Institute. They claim that once he's out, his real villain persona is going to come out and they'll utilize it. This is when Electro volunteers to do the job of breaking out the Sandman. With this comic, we get a little bit more on Peter's life and how it's going. His thoughts seem to be very preoccupied with whatever Sandman told him in the previous issue. And that was the fact that the Sinister Six are planning to rise up again. And their first goal is to break Sandman out. While he's preoccupied with those thoughts, he gets confronted by none other than Michelle, Tombstone's lawyer. Y'all remember Michelle, right? The lawyer he went out on a date with like once and it went horrible. Well, in this comic, she comes back and claims that she actually found the entire situation hot and she hopes to get back with Peter again. Peter rightfully blows her off, but we get the craziest dialogue from Michelle. So right before Michelle storms off, she claims that Peter is a complete psychopath and not one of the fun ones. First of all, we're insinuating that Michelle was just outside of Peter's apartment because that's how she came across him when he was leaving the apartment. So is she stalking Peter? And then for some reason, the comic also lets us know that she's into crazy freak psychopaths. Weird actual detail to know about Michelle for some reason. So all we actually really know about this woman is the fact that, yeah, she's Tombstone's lawyer and she dates freaks. After Michelle storms off, we get revealed that MJ was watching the entire situation play out, causing it to really get awkward. Despite that, Peter suits up and joins MJ on a conversation on the rooftop of the building. Their conversation mainly consists of them trying to move on with their own respective relationships. They both confess that it is definitely taking them a bit to get used to it. As it was explained with the entire storyline involving Rabin and Paul, MJ was taken to another dimension where she ended up falling in love with Paul, and then some random kids showed up. MJ got really attached to them. She grew to like them as a family over this period of time that she was in this other dimension. And then when she came back, unfortunately for Peter, she already fell for this guy and had these random kids. But she didn't actually have the kids herself. The kids were actually found by both MJ and Paul when they were exploring this other dimension. Despite all that history, MJ questions to Peter whether it's weird that they're both suited up in their superhero costumes and fighting crime together. Peter admits that it's definitely weird, but with intolerance. And the comic is insinuating to us that there is definitely something going down with Peter and MJ. Personally, for me, they killed off any interest of them actually being together. We're getting that with Ultimate Spider-Man now, so I don't even care. They already lost my interest with whatever they were doing with separating Peter and MJ to begin with. Why do I care at this point? This is probably to appease some of the Peter MJ shippers, but I'm not that kind of person. I'm just in it for the story, dog. Spider-Man and MJ then notice a large orb of light and electricity coming from the distance. It just so conveniently seems that it's coming from the Ravencroft Institute. Now, before I go any further, let's talk about how it's actually going with Aunt Anna at the Institute itself before all the chaos goes down. Now, the comic explains very well that Aunt Anna, while she's at the Institute, is actually getting along very well with the residents there. They all actually look up to her. Weird, but slightly funny, I guess. The story comes out saying that, or insinuating that, there might be a crush between Sandman and Aunt Anna, which definitely wouldn't be far-fetched, as we've seen already that Dr. Octopus marries Aunt May at one point back in the early comics. Although, to be fair, it only slightly gets touched upon, just by having the nurse at the Institute call both Aunt Anna and Sandman lovebirds as they're working on some plans. Mind I remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that the Ravencroft Institute is meant to hold some very mentally insane main villains. At one point, Cletus Cassidy was held here, but it seems that all the residents, despite all their flaws, they're getting along very well with Aunt Anna. As far as action goes, we get a little bit for sure. Now, with the confrontation between Electro at the Ravencroft Institute and Spider-Man and MJ now showing up, weird though that MJ does most of the fighting in this situation. I mean, sure, Spider-Man shows up and webs up Electro using his insulated webbing, but apart from that, MJ is the one that basically handles the entire situation. She does get into a pickle though the moment when Electro gets a hold of her, and of course he's gonna electrocute the hell out of her. Spider-Man is more preoccupied in trying to save MJ in that situation. It gets revealed that MJ actually had it the whole time. So all the action we actually get from Spider-Man is just webbing up Electro initially, and then having him think that he's actually saving MJ when MJ's been, now a superhero for who knows how long. She's already experienced, I'm assuming. She knows how to defend herself, and if she gets electrocuted, well, probably prevent that from happening by having Spider-Man web him up again. Like, you just use that insulated webbing once and that's it? While MJ's doing all this distraction and actually fighting Electro, Spider-Man's just standing there. Like, what the heck, dog? But yeah, the moment he believes he's actually doing something to help, he really isn't, and it causes Electro to get away. Now, once again, to building whatever tension the comic wants to build with Peter and MJ's relationship, there is some tension, I guess, purposely being implemented by having Peter now on top of MJ after quote-unquote saving her. Going with the comic book's explanation, it just makes Spider-Man very lame. The fact that he isn't really doing much to help, and the help that he feels like he's actually doing allows Electro to get away. That's whack, bro. Now that Electro's actually powered up, he tries to break out the Sandman from his cell. He doesn't want to go. He claims that he's William Baker and not Flint Marko. Electro actually starts getting slightly violent, but gets interrupted by having Aunt Anna throw a flower pot at his head and yelling to get away from him because that's her friend. This causes Electro to try to take out Aunt Anna from the equation because he just doesn't have the time for it. The moment he walks up to Aunt Anna and tries laying a finger on her, he actually gets attacked by the residents of the Institute, because now that we have a blackout due to the fact that Electro took all the energy for himself, the prisoners managed to free themselves. But they see Aunt Anna actually getting attacked, and they beat the hell out of Electro. To add a little bit more context to the story, the prisoners themselves wanted to escape now that there's a blackout. Seeing that Aunt Anna is actually in danger causes them to put themselves forward to beat the hell out of Electro and, save her. This is probably the craziest way I have ever read that Spider-Man has taken down a villain. Get this right, ladies and gentlemen. So it's been established since the previous issue and this issue itself that one of the Ravencroft residents is actually just a ginormous hippo. Now, out of all the Spider-Man stories out there, I personally haven't read of there actually being a moment where Spider-Man fights a crazy hippo, although I'm totally down to find out what story that hippo originates from. Without steering too far off course, I need to get into how Spider-Man defeats Electro in this situation. Now, mind you, everyone else is actually doing something in the efforts to actually take down Electro. MJ shows up, she's like beating him down with some metal arms and then launches some pink metal bowling balls or whatever. And then you also got the Ravencroft Institute residents fighting Electro at the same time. Like, they're all making an effort to bring this guy down. And then you got Spider-Man over here who walks up to that hippo resident, pushes him in the direction of Electro, causing the hippo to fall over and sit on Electro, taking him out of the fight. Can y'all believe that? And then the moment Spider-Man pushes the hippo's yelling, "Ah, Spider-Man's attacking me." What a funny end to a conflict. Like, you get moments in like Ultimate Spider-Man #3 where they're fighting Bullseye and crazy fights are going down, the dude's being cocky, and then you get moments in this one where everyone's making an effort to take down Electro and Spider-Man just shows up and pushes a hippo on him. What the heck? Anyways, after the incident scenario, the Institute decides to release Aunt Anna early because of her bravery or something like that. So she finally gets to go home. Story is starting to have a proper resolution where Electro ends up going to the raft and William Baker isn't hearing Sandman's voice in his head. But then we immediately get a moment where the nurse from the Ravencroft Institute is talking to William Baker, and William explains to her that he doesn't feel like like he's beaten the Sandman. He believes that the Sandman persona actually has left him and that he's no longer there. And he believes that now that he's no longer there, he feels that himself, William Baker, probably isn't either. Despite having the inhibitor on himself at that moment, he breaks into sand and actually escapes the Institute. I honestly probably don't have the IQ levels to understand what's happening right now in that situation. I'm definitely gonna need one of y'all's that read the story to explain it to me, because I really don't get that. The only thing that I understand from it is possibly that maybe the Sandman persona fell in love with Aunt Anna, and the fact that Aunt Anna left the Institute, so did Sandman in some form mentally from William Baker, and thus William Baker had to break out using the sand form. And the only reason I believe the Sandman personality quote-unquote left William Baker for Aunt Anna is the fact that Aunt Anna did take a plant home that she ended up growing at the Institute herself, and at the end of the comic it's seen or explained that the plant itself is missing and it probably fell somewhere. Hopefully it didn't hurt anyone, but the artwork in the comic possibly explains that the Sandman showed up and took the plant, possibly insinuating that the villain persona is the one that fell in love with Aunt Anna. Or maybe I'm looking too deep into this and I'm really stupid. Let me know in the comments. Anyways, the comic ends by having the Sinister Six finally form up together, and you're probably wondering, the Sinister Six, including Electro, didn't he get taken to the raft? It's probably assumed that the Sandman broke Electro out of the prison containment unit that was transporting him to the raft. The Sinister Six are now fully assembled and we're left on a to be continued, ladies and gentlemen. So, thoughts, comments, concerns? What do we think about the comic? Well, right off the bat, I personally think that the writing quality definitely has maintained the consistency of the previous issue. Sure, we're diving into some pretty silly factors like previously, but the past, 44 issues? Not counting issue number 45, but before that, the writing definitely felt very dull. It was lackluster. It didn't have much explanation to it. Things just happened and you really didn't care. As I explained on my previous review, we went from a level 1 level of writing, which basically consists of what I just described. We've leveled up to a level 2 style writing, where they at least have a coherent story where things feel like they matter. This really feels like they're wrapping up old storylines and they're beginning new ones with a brand new tone. As I've mentioned in my previous review on issue number 45, if they continue with this level of consistency as they've done with this issue and the previous issue, well, they're still making the comics fun. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video at any point, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.